thing we have to fear is
in war,
fear itself.
there is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
You find your way to the intersection of faith and politics. This is WallBuilders Live. Thanks for joining us today. Visit us online at wallbuilders.com and wallbuilderslive.com. I'm Rick Green here with Tim Barton and David Barton. Guys, we're talking about politics and faith and how it impacts, how our faith should impact politics. A lot of people think politics is nothing but election day in November, and then even in the legislature or Congress, bills just come to the floor and everybody votes and that's it. But there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes fighting for the values that we believe in. We've got some good friends in Washington that stand firm for biblical values.
Well, it's that perception that politics is all about November and voting on a few things that causes us to elect so many bad people to Congress. Because Congress is a whole lot more than that, and it's the stuff you don't hear about that's a whole lot more important than what you hear about. And so in any given session of Congress, Tim and I just got back from Washington, D.C., and coming back from D.C., we had about 140 pastors in D.C., and for 2 days they met with a dozen congressmen or so. And so they hear a congressman 30 minutes at a time, and I'll bet that 90% of what they heard they had never heard on the news before they got to that meeting. And these are all bills and issues that are up. They're all things that are being dealt with, all things that are fighting on the floor of Congress right now, and 90% of it they'd never heard in the news. And they saw these guys, and they came away and said, man, we never knew that this went on. I just got an email just before we went on the air from a guy who said, I've been to Washington a lot of times. I didn't know this was going on. I didn't know these guys were having to fight this fight. These guys are real people. And it was a remarkable email because it was one of these things that people don't understand. So any given session of Congress, if you listen to the news, you will hear over the course of that session maybe 24 issues that Congress has addressed. In reality, there's between 10 and 13,000 bills introduced every session of Congress. There's probably at least 1,000 votes every session of Congress. While we were there over a course of 20 minutes, they had 4 votes. I mean, it's just there were that many votes. And so there were a lot of things. They actually voted on 7 different budgets, 7 budget proposals, alternative budgets. That didn't make the news. I've not seen a single news story on the 7 different versions of the budget. It just doesn't make the news. And so because we let the news tell us there's only 24 things that we know about, then we vote people in on the basis of those 24 things, and those usually aren't the most important things.
And let me throw in, too, this is one of the things that the Founding Fathers talked about, the difference between a politician and a statesman. And largely, it was just someone that had integrity, someone that you knew was going to do the right thing when nobody else was looking. And this is the significance of that. The majority of the votes that happen, we never hear about. And so if we don't elect someone, and this is where faith and morality becomes so significant when it comes to politics, where so often we're told that faith, hey, you know, what they do in their private life, that's their private life. You know, Bill Clinton and all those guys, hey, that's their private life. That has nothing to do with them as a politician. Well, that's a direct reflection of them as a politician, because their morals are what is going to guide them when nobody else is watching. And this is why it's so important that we elect the guys that have faith, that have the moral basis, so that when they have all these bills that no one ever hears about, they have the integrity to do the right thing. And I think that was one of the things that stood out so much to so many of the pastors that were just in D.C. with us, is they got to see these guys, that these are really not just real guys, but guys that we connect with. They have faith, they have beliefs and morals and convictions just like we do. And so sometimes it's easy for us as the American people to see things going on and feel like that nobody gets it, nobody's fighting for what I care about, and nobody understands, you know, the kind of the beat of my heart. And then to see guys that are there that really do, it's just not the guys that CNN covers. It's not the guys that MSNBC or Fox covers, but these are guys that have integrity, that are making the right decisions. And there really are those guys there. We just need more of them.
After y'all left from D.C., do you think a lot of those pastors and spouses that came in, did their attitude change? I mean, after hearing from a lot of these congressmen where they saw those hearts that were turned towards God, did they go home a little bit more encouraged?
We heard feedback all day long. And I mean, we'd take breaks occasionally, and we'd take a meal, or we'd get water or whatever. And these guys say, I never knew they had to deal with this. I've never heard that issue. I can't believe that they, and so these guys would talk about things that were really crucial, and the pastors are going, yeah, that's what we believe too. Yeah, we didn't know anybody was touching that. And then you find out these guys are wearing bulletproof vests because they've been shot at so many times for standing for these issues, and the pastors didn't know anybody even knew those issues were going on. And so I would say of the 14, 15 folks, the congressmen that spoke to him, only one was known through television before they heard these others. And so it became very clear to them that, I've heard one of these guys on TV, and usually they take that person because they want to beat up on TV, but I've never heard these other guys. And what I just learned from them is exactly what I believe and what I wish somebody would be dealing with, and I never heard they were dealing with this. And I mean, we heard that throughout both days. Hands down, that was what we got the most of. And that's why I say if you're going to vote based on November, and if you're going to vote based on what you see on the news, you'll always vote wrong, because you'll never know about the real issues that are happening and the people that are standing for it and the people that are fighting for it. Again, we talked to members yesterday who were being attacked by their own party for standing for where they stand, but they haven't backed up. They're not partisan hacks. They're in there for the right reasons, right principles, but you never see these guys on TV. So it's good stuff. And there's several groups up there we work with, and one of the groups, and the reason the groups are important is with 10 to 13,000 bills, nobody can keep up with all 10 to 13,000. I mean, there's no way that any congressman can read 10 to 13,000 bills, especially when they're health care bills that are 2,500 pages long, et cetera. So what you do is you rely on caucuses and you rely on staff to help you with that. I was up there dealing with some of the staff on some issues that they didn't know about, that they need to know about, that they now know about. So I've been told that, they're going to have hearings on this stuff because they hadn't been told about it. So there's stuff that happens when they find out about it. But aside from that, you need people like caucuses. And that's why you have the China caucus, you have the European caucus, the NATO caucus. They look through every bill to see if there's anything related to their issue, whether it's NATO or whether it's submarines or Navy or whatever. And one of the caucuses is called the Value Action Team. And what they do is they look through those 10 to 13,000 bills to see if there anything that deals with family and moral and religious values. Is there anything that deals with life or abortion, that deals with marriage or homosexuality, deals with conscience protection, deals with military expressions of faith in the military? Is there anything that deals with our foreign funding through USAID, what we do overseas and promoting morality, immorality? They go through every bill and look at that. And there are 80 members of Congress that are part of that group, and they meet once a week just to scrub the bills and go over the stuff that's there. I mean, these are committed folks. And so Joe Pitts is the head of that caucus. He's the one who's pulled them together. They've networked with outside groups. They're very effective. They have saved our bacon as traditional Americans more than once. I mean, they've saved that a lot of times, and we never hear about it. So we thought it'd be good to get Joe on and just let him kind of update us on what's happening.
He's definitely one of the good guys, even as Tim was saying earlier, some of the champions that are there that stand for these values. We don't even hear about them much or see them on the news. Joe Pitts is one of those guys, and he's been in this fight a long time and stood his ground. He's a good friend of ours, and we're glad to have him on. Stay with us here on WallBuilders Live. Hey, friends, this is Rick Green, and I want to share with you a phenomenal opportunity for your family. David Barton and I both have family members experiencing this right now. It's called College Plus, and it is the best program out there for saving your family a tremendous amount of money on college education for your children, but more importantly, years of their life and getting them in touch with their purpose, their greatest calling that God has on their life right now. And this is not some mail-order college degree, folks. I'm talking about getting your degree from places like Liberty University or Concordia University or Bryan College, great colleges and universities, and other ones as well. My son Trey's doing it right now at only 16 years old. He's already a sophomore in college. It's been a phenomenal experience for our family. No age requirements, folks. You can do College Plus as well, regardless of your age. You got to check it out right now at WallBuildersLive.com.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Our good friend Congressman Joe Pitts with us. Always good to have you on, sir. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you. My privilege.
Hey, appreciate you taking time. I know you guys are in the middle of some votes and whatnot.
Yeah.
We just wanted to get an update from you on how the Values Action Team's going and just kind of what it's looking like for you guys this year.
Well, it's going real well. We've got an inside-outside coalition of members and outside groups. We meet every week. We had a values summit, which is held annually with our leadership. Had a good opportunity for all the pro-life, pro-family groups on the outside to talk to leadership, and express their priorities and concerns. Talk to committee chairmen. We are working right now on making sure the pro-life riders get in the appropriations bills. We're in the appropriations process right now. So we've got,
and that's something you guys follow every time around. I mean, there's a bunch of those riders that if y'all weren't on top of that, any one of them could disappear, as you go along with each appropriations bill, right?
That's correct. And, this year we're doing the appropriations bills unlike before when we were doing CRs, continuing resolutions. So we're amending each of the appropriations bills with the appropriate riders. We've got some 19 annual riders that we push for, and some new ones as problems develop. One of the interesting cases going on now is the conscience issue. I had the privilege of sitting in the Supreme Court during oral arguments that were brought by two cases. One was Hobby Lobby, and the other was Conestoga Wood Specialties, which is my constituents in Lancaster. And their attorney, was arguing against the government case represented by Sebelius and our Solicitor General, of course. And it was really interesting to sit there and listen to the arguments. I know the Hans, who own the Conestoga Wood Company. Mr. and Ms. Hahn started this business 50 years ago in their garage. They now have 950 employees, and of course they're devout Mennonites, and they've always provided good health care for their employees. But this new regulation from Obamacare came down from the government saying you must provide this kind of coverage, namely prevention services, which includes contraceptives and abortifacients, and they have a moral objection to providing funds to have coverage for abortion pills, anything that would cause an abortion. So they sued to protect their religious freedom.
Yeah.
And, that's why their forefathers came to Pennsylvania, for crying out loud, to be able to practice their faith, in their lives, in the way they operate their business, the way they conduct their lives.
It's not just something at home. It's something your religion impacts you in everything you do, including your business.
Absolutely. And the bureaucrats don't get that. They tried to write a narrow exception for churches, certain type churches anyway, in the bill. Well, if you're in your church building and your seminary, it may cover you, but not a normal person, living their lives and conducting their businesses. It's sort of hard for them to understand you can have a moral objection to operating in a certain manner. But anyway, the potential fine for them, if they don't provide this abortifacient coverage to each of their employees, is up to $100 per day per employee. That's $36,500 a year per employee. For times 950 employees, that's a lot of money.
You're out of business. There's no way. Yeah.
Now, if they would just drop their coverage, the employer mandate in the bill says if you don't provide any health care coverage, you'll pay $2,000 fine per year. But in violating this specific regulation, providing health insurance with abortifacient coverage, the fine is up to $36,500 per employee per year. It's outrageous.
Yeah, and you would think that must have been one of those things we had to pass before we could read it, right? I mean, that's
right.
Just no logic there at all. But you can understand why they would. I mean, for them, just like the Greens at Hobby Lobby, this is a do or die situation. It's either you're in business or you're not. You're either in business with your conscience, or you choose not to be in business anymore because you're not going to be forced to do things against your strongly held beliefs.
And it would bankrupt them. Absolutely. So I really admire them for Hobby Lobby, the Green family, and the Hahn family with Conestoga Wood for taking a stand for religious freedom and conscience. We have a tradition in this country, like for conscientious objectors, the people who came to Pennsylvania, like the Mennonites, the Anabaptists, the Quakers, the Amish, they were pacifists, and we have an understanding and a provision, called conscientious objector status.
Yeah.
So you can't be compelled, to to go into the military and bear arms. Well, this is another conscience principle, basically, that the Obama administration's violating with their regulation and trying to extort, if you will, or compel someone to obey this regulation. And I'm hopeful the Supreme Court, will overturn this. Their decision will come down probably in late June. And I watched and listened intently. I think we have a real chance to win this, but who knows what the court's going to do.
Yeah, you would think if our First Amendment means anything, and if the intent of the founders means anything, that they would definitely find for these businesses. Do you think, Congressman, this is almost done, it's increasing y'all's job at the Values Action Team, because now not only have you got to be watching these appropriations bills and all the riders and keeping taxpayer money from being used in abortions, but all of these other areas as well. I want to ask you about that when we come back, how much that workload itself has increased with all these attacks on so many fronts. Stay with us. Joe Pitts, our guest here on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. The teachings of God's Word are the best friend civil government has because these teachings deal with the heart. Only by dealing with the heart can crime be prevented, for as Jesus explained in Matthew 5, all crime comes from the heart. Understanding this, Daniel Webster, the great defender of the Constitution, once declared, "The cultivation of the religious sentiment represses licentiousness. It inspires respect for law and order and gives strength to the whole social fabric. Whatever makes men good Christians makes them good citizens." Indeed, it is not the good Christians whom the police arrest for armed robbery, gang activity, or other such crimes. Understanding this, the Founding Fathers encouraged religious instruction, for as Daniel Webster so accurately noted, good Christians make good citizens.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Congressman Joe Pitts from Pennsylvania is with us today. He heads up the Values Action Team, and we've been talking about the work that they do there. There's so many more issues now. You guys are getting attacked on, our values are getting attacked on so many fronts. I don't know how you guys keep up with all of it, but I hope that your team is growing because the battles just seem to keep increasing.
Yeah, it's much more complicated these days because you've got court cases you got to monitor. You've got administrative actions and executive orders, and we're trying to write letters to the appropriate bureaucrats as well as get laws, bills introduced and enacted, and language in writer form in various bills. So what we're doing now is trying to expand our tribe, if you will. We're recruiting and getting other members, some of the newer members that haven't fought these fights, to take responsibility to carry a certain right or speak up, take ownership, really carry this on the floor in committee, because it's just so broad anymore. Not only life, but, family, homosexual, gay marriage issues, conscience issues, things, in the military anymore. They're making silly regulations like taking the words "under God," out of their oath or out of their handbook, and just it's just an assault on all fronts. We really need more and more people engaged in this public policy debate, speaking to their representatives, appealing to them, holding them accountable. It's just on a broad front anymore.
I'm wondering if one of the best things we can do at home to help you guys is a lot of new, good people have been sent to Congress. Maybe it helps for us to say to our members of Congress, especially these new ones, we want you not only there to make the right votes when the time comes, but to go be champions behind the scenes, fighting these battles like this. And we want you out front leading the charge.
Exactly. If you could do that, the best way to do it is meeting with them face-to-face in their district office, appealing to them, asking them to take something, an issue, to champion it, to carry it, to introduce the legislation, to introduce the amendment, to get the language in the bill, to raise the issue in committee, debate it in committee, debate it on the floor, educate the public, recruit other people. It's so important. We need to get more and more of our people. And we've got a lot of new freshmen, a lot of good people, but we need them to step up to the plate like that. And your constituents could help make that happen.
Well, we so appreciate you, Congressman. You've been leading the charge on so many of these issues for so long. It's why you're one of our favorites, and pray that some of this new blood's coming in there to help hold your arms up and come alongside you. And to get, it sounds like that's exactly what's happening when you talk about getting more and more of them involved. So hopefully a lot of good there as well, and we'll certainly be praying for success. Values Action Team is such an important part.
Well, thank you, and keep educating your people and let them, educate the members, because some members, you're spread thin, you have a lot of different issues, and it's really important that your constituents who know about these issues and care about them spoon feed and educate and keep appealing and holding accountable.
Yeah.
Very, very important.
Amen. Well, Congressman, thank you for your time. We appreciate you.
Sir.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing.
You bet. That's Congressman Joe Pitts. Back in a moment with David and Tim Barton. Red, White, Blue, and Green is a new reality show following the Green family around the nation, rediscovering the American principles that made us the most successful nation in the history of the world. You can be a part of launching this new reality series by visiting rickgreen.com and clicking on the Red, White, Blue, and Green tab. Here's a sneak peek from the pilot episode. Rick Green coming to you live from the Lone Star State of Texas, a beacon of hope and freedom to liberty lovers around the world. Today I'm thinking about why do we do what we do? Because everywhere we go as a family, when we're traveling and speaking, someone comes up to us and asks, where's the hope? Is it over for America? They genuinely feel like the stars and stripes are fading. I felt that. But when I look at my family, whether it's my son Trey and his drive to exceed expectations, or Reagan and his love for serving and teaching other people, Cameron and her determination to outperform her brothers in everything she does, or my little stagehound Rhett and his boundless enthusiasm. Through their eyes, I see a vibrant nation. When my children stand in the birthplace of the Constitution, or on battlefields where patriots gave their lives, I can see in them a rekindled flame of the American spirit. The future of my children's country is bright because it's built on the foundation of an incredible providential history. A history of patriots and pastors, entrepreneurs and freedom fighters, mothers, fathers, families like yours and mine, who chose to live like their nation depended on it. And it still does. So when people ask us, where is the hope? We tell them, it's in you. Each of us, every individual, every family, has a duty to fight for freedom and add our voice, our color, to the American dream. For our family, it's red, white, and blue, and a little bit of green. To learn more about Red, White, Blue, and Green, visit rickgreen.com.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Special thanks to Congressman Joe Pitts. I know he was having to squeeze us in, guys, just like you were talking about earlier, David. They vote an awful lot.
Yeah,
he was right in between votes and gave us a great visit. But you guys had talked about the fact that we, the people, don't know most of those votes that are taking place. But you also said even the congressmen have a hard time keeping up with all those votes, and that's why they need these groups. But Joe also suggested that we, the people, actually inform the congressman, that we call our congressman and say, hey, here's an issue you need to know about. Here's one I'd like you to jump on.
Rick, I thought that was so interesting when he said that. One of the things my dad mentioned is when we were just up in D.C., we had the chance to meet with several congressmen and tell them things that were going on that were relatively big news for us in our circles and our bubbles, but was brand new information to them, had not heard anything about it, didn't know anything about it. We're getting them more information, and they're blown away by it. And so when Congressman Pitts said, really you need to inform your congressman, I thought that really we forget and don't even understand how true that is, because it's so easy for the congressman in the midst of all that they have to do in their schedule throughout the day to get wrapped up in their own agenda, and not that they're not doing their job, because they're knocking it out, but it's easy for them to miss some of the things that are really significant for us. And so by us calling and informing and educating them, it enables them to fight for us on behalf for these important issues.
Yeah, and it's hard for us to imagine how many issues. I mean, David, like you said, 10 to 13,000. When I was a state legislator, it was only about 5,000 bills, but even then, my
that's
head
the state
was
of
swimming.
Texas.
There was no way to keep up with that. I needed constituents to come in and say, hey, this is an important issue to me. Have you looked at this? And it would kind of get our staff's attention, and we go dive into it.
That's exactly right. And one of the things, too, that also helps is knowing and understanding the process. And one is you can make a difference, and don't assume that know everything about everything. But something else they said that I thought really needs to be explained. He was talking about continuing resolutions versus budget and appropriations. And those are things that people think they're all the same. They're not. Continuing resolution says, we don't have a budget, so let's just keep doing what we've been doing for the last several years. Well, in the meantime, the IRS and the NSA comes along and does stupid stuff. And instead of saying, we're going to cut your budget because you're way out of control, we, in a continuing resolution, just say, we're going to keep doing what you were doing back when you were doing good. And so we fund everything at the same level. That's why they don't like continuing resolutions. You can't modify it for what has come up or what's gone on. You can't punish the bad guys and reward the good guys. So that's a continuing resolution. It's a temporary fix. That's why the White House has not done a budget at all. By the way, the White House did have a vote on their budget this last week. Only 2 members of Congress voted for the White House budget, and that's their own members as well. I have not seen that in a single news report anywhere in the nation, but that's what happened. But appropriations, we say, okay, for the White House, we're going to give them $100 billion or whatever. Well, budget comes in and says, of that $100 billion, you're going to spend $10 billion over here, or $10 billion over here, or 12. Budget is where you really get to hone in, and this is where we make the most difference. So when we have a budget, we make more advances than we do without a budget, and that's why Joe's so fixed on fixing the budget right now.
And that's why all those riders are so important.
That's
These
right.
guys keep up with every line in that budget. Well, we thank the good Lord for Joe Pitts and so many more like him. Let's get them some help, and let's make those calls to our congressmen to clue them in on these key issues. Thanks for joining us today on WallBuilders Live.